the total world of a movie story, the events, characters, objects, settings, and sounds that form the world in which the story occurs, is called its diegesis. The elements that make up that diegesis are called diegetic elements. At first glance, you might assume that everything you see in a movie can therefore be considered diegetic. Well, almost everything is. Every setting, every element of the mise-en-scène, every character, everything a character says, even everything a character thinks is indeed part of the diegesis and therefore diegetic. But there are still plenty of significant elements that we see and hear during a movie that, informative and evocative as they may be, come from outside the world of the story. These elements are called, appropriately enough, non-diegetic elements. Non-diegetic elements include text, the kind used in credits and titles, and sometimes superimposed right over the picture, like this. Voiceover from a third-person narrator, in other words, a narrator that is not a character in the story, sort of like you're hearing right now. And of course, score music. Any music, really, that isn't sourced within the world of the story. Even images can be non-diegetic. When shots of things that are clearly not a part of the story world are inserted into the movie, it's called a non-diegetic insert. The great Soviet film pioneer Sergei Eisenstein liked this technique. In this scene from his film October, the mechanical peacock is not part of the story world. It's an outside image juxtaposed with the shots of the Russian Prime Minister Alexander Kerensky to make a point about what kind of a person he is. It's not a complimentary point. The relationship between diegetic and non-diegetic elements may seem a bit contentious in this example, but the truth is most movies blend the two with a fluidity that's both cooperative and expressive. Let's take a closer look at some of the short films on Disc 2 and see how they do it. Here's the opening of Death to the Tin Man.
You are a beautiful and reckless woman.
Damn right I am.
You're gonna be the death of me.
Probably.
I don't care.
All right. It's your funeral.
Bill was the town pariah, the most hated man in a 20-mile radius. The reasons for this were unclear. Maybe it was because he spent his youth in and out of jail. Maybe it was because he fought and drank and used the Lord's name in vain without remorse. Maybe it was because he was the greatest firefighter the town had ever seen. So brave, he made the others look like cowards.
As you can see and hear, we've come to expect even, movie narration to supplement the world of the story with expressive elements imposed from the outside. For example, let's take an even closer look at the opening of The Big Charade. The Big Charade functions as a narrative film, but it's also a parody of movie trailers. This non-diegetic element is here to establish the premise of the presentation. Let's continue.
Okay, movie.
Movie.
Forward, second word.
Word out, one syllable.
One syllable. It sounds like here. That still sounds like here.
Okay, now everything we're looking at is part of the diegesis. But what about the sounds we're hearing? We don't see where they're coming from. They may be coming from the next room, although the way they're mixed, they may even be in this character's head. Doesn't matter. Whether they're coming from off-screen or inside this guy's fevered imagination, they are part of the world of the story and are thus diegetic. Moving on.
Here.
Fourth word.
Fourth word.
Okay.
Time. Watch.
Okay, watch. A long time. Loose time.
Stretchy loose time.
Hour.
This summer,
Here and forever?
Infinity.
From here to eternity.
forget everything you thought you knew about charades.
Now things are really happening. The movie revealed that the sounds were off-screen sounds, which are diegetic. And we've got a couple of non-diegetic elements. Non-diegetic voiceover.
Forget everything you thought you knew about charades.
The dramatic, deep-throated kind we associate with movie trailers, and score music. That does affect our experience and interpretation of the narrative, but is not part of the world of the story. Now we're going to cut back and forth between non-diegetic graphic elements representing the movie trailer countdown and diegetic shots of our character in action. Now watch this.
Somebody told me the French made it up hundreds of years ago. But I always thought my dad invented it just for me.
This voiceover is first person. It is sourced in our protagonist, and he is part of the world of the story, diegetic. It doesn't matter that we're watching him as a child, but hearing from him as an adult. The story character is the source, and that makes it diegetic. But again, the score music in the background that makes the sad story that much sadder is non-diegetic. It may comment on the action or enhance our interpretation of the situation, but it comes from outside the world of the story. The short film Bartholomew's Song is almost devoid of non-diegetic elements, but it's got lots of off-screen sounds and artificial ambience and sound effects. And these sounds were all created and added after the movie was shot, but they represent the world of the story, which makes them diegetic. There is no voiceover.
Place component A on component B.
This doesn't count. It's a PA system transmitting the voice of an off-screen character from within the world of the story. And there is no score. In fact, the lack of this most common non-diegetic element, music, is an important part of what makes this world feel so sterile and bleak. But wait, here's some music. But is it non-diegetic? No, because it's functioning within the world of the story. Here's a good rule of thumb. If the character can hear it, it's diegetic. But what about this final scene? Bartholomew 467 and his music have been eliminated. There is no tangible source of the music in the story world.
Place component A on component B. Attach component
Yet we're hearing it. Context tells us that it is not actually playing within the assembly line setting. So, can this be non-diegetic? No, it is still diegetic because one of the characters can hear it in his head. This music conveys that the music of Bartholomew 467 and everything it represents lives on in the mind of Bartholomew 584. Sometimes it does get a little tricky to recognize what's diegetic and what's not, but it makes for interesting analysis that can help us understand how movies function. And even though the terms make it sound that way, diegetic and non-diegetic elements are not in conflict. They work together to do what movies do: tell stories, convey meaning, and elicit emotional responses.